Hello and welcome. It's Rocio, Community Manager at Paradox Tectonic, and this week I want to walk you through some more build stuff. I know before we showed you a bit of a preview with some of our old UI, but we're making changes and we're revamping a lot of it, so I wanted to walk you through some of those changes as well as some stuff you haven't seen in build mode yet. Now I've gone ahead and made it a little bit later in the day just so the trees aren't in my way, and like you might remember from the last time, the first step is to make the shape of your house. Last time I drew it out and it was kind of funky, so let me just go ahead and build a standard square house. And a quick note up top, we are currently working through some of the build mode features right now, so you'll see me pausing, I'm taking notes, I'm playing through just like you would trying to build a house, so bear with me and bear with all of the fast forwarding while I make really bad design choices. Here you can see that I'm trying to pick out the flooring for the house. I do settle on wood. I try to get the pattern at a place where I think it will really shine in a house that's this big. Once I start to set up the rooms, you'll see that it actually is quite spacious. And I am adjusting the color a little bit because I want it to be a bit brighter. You can always add it as a preset. You can put in your own hex code if you have a specific color in mind, and you can pick from existing presets as well. And down here you'll find your custom colors. This includes colors that you've saved previously, so you might recognize some of these from old videos. Another familiar feature is the ability to move your house. You can rotate it, you can raise it, and you can lower it. I'm not going to do any of these right now, but I just kind of am getting a feel for it. Let's go ahead and actually make ourselves a room. We go to the floor plan tools, and here you can see you can add boxes to extend your floor plan, create more walls. You can actually reduce your floor plan, but what we really want right now is to add interior rooms. You can still relocate your house as mentioned, and you can erase walls, but again, we want to make a room right now. Let me go ahead and draw out this room. This is a 1 bedroom, 1 bath. I'm going to leave this area here for the door. And I'm back from a quick build break so that I could take some notes on my process. Again, we're trying to make sure that build mode feels and plays well. Builders in the community, please let us know what you think in the comments, and also don't judge me too harshly on this build. So here I'm drawing the walls for the bathroom of my 1 bedroom, 1 bath. I'm leaving the living room kitchen area pretty open and spacious in case, whoever lives here needs room for activities. And I know last time the house was kind of uninhabitable, but my goal here is to make it at least somewhat habitable. And let's start by adding doors. And on the left, you'll see that we have new icons for each of our different menu options here, including furniture, doors, windows, roofs, stairs, fences, and decorations, including boxes, window dressings, and roof flares, which you can see here. From there, you have your outdoor options like plants and tiling, and your demolish tool at the bottom. Now let's actually add some doors. I'm going to need 2 interior doors, 1 for the bedroom, 1 for the bath. And I'm just kind of placing them where they make the most sense, but I can always move it later if I don't like it. And for the front door, let's go ahead and pick this out. I'll fix it up later. I think right now, let's make sure the house is actually where I want it to be. Now that I know where my front door is, I think I'm going to put this flush to the sidewalk. I'm going to go ahead and actually move the house, push the house back a little bit just so that I have room for a nice cobblestone entrance. And we do a bit of a shimmy back, and there we go. Our walls are a bit white, so let me go ahead and fix that. I opt for a pattern, and I do go through a couple of options, but ultimately I go with the classic. Now that I've settled on my pattern, I can use the little eyedropper to go ahead and apply it to each of the walls. I think I'm leaving the living room space this pattern, and I'll pick some new patterns or colors for the rooms. Let's start with the bedroom, and I think I'm going with a color, nothing too bright. I do try out a couple of options, but as you might tell from my color schemes down here, I have my favorite color, which is purple, so I go for like a purplish gray. And again, you just apply that to the other walls in the room. And a quick detour while I'm distracted. Let me show you this tool up here. This is the toggle snap, which allows you to toggle snapping to the grid on or off. Let's get back to these walls. So if you click that icon in the upper left, that basically just brings the walls up or down. You can toggle that as you like. Let me just finish coloring these walls and we'll move on. And you can always move walls if they're not where you want them to be. And now we move on to the bathroom. So here I'm sorting by tile and I'm going through a couple of options trying to figure out what goes with this house. I already have a pattern outside, so I don't want to go too complicated. I end up settling on this classic tile and I play around with some colors, but I do settle on a nice clean mint color. And you're used to this by now, but next step is to eyedropper all the rest of the walls. So I just go through and quickly make sure all of my walls match and I have a nice cohesive bathroom set up. So I have wood flooring across the entire house right now, but let's say I wanted the bathroom to be distinct. Here I click on the entire flooring and then I click Update Room-Based Flooring. That now provides separate sections for each of the rooms. Here I can click on the bathroom and from there decide what I want it to look like. I do end up going with just clean white floors. This bathroom is going to be pretty minimalist, I think. And if I wanted to, I could do that for the bedroom as well, but I'm leaving that hardwood. Now for a quick pivot to the doors. Here I've gone ahead and set up some really bright, obnoxious colors so you can see what I'm doing. Color 1 here is the frame, and so I'm going to go ahead and set that to something that might match this wall, and maybe something that would also match the bathroom. Once I've settled on a color for that one, I can move on to the next one, which is the interior of the door. I pick something that I hope complements it. Let me know what you think about my weird doors in the comments for sure. Then we move on to part 3 of the door, and I start off with white. I can already tell that I kind of am leaning towards that color, but I play around a little bit to make sure that's what I ultimately want, and I settle on a slightly off-white. For color number 4, it's currently a bright green on that doorknob handle, so I'm going to move it to be a little bit more golden to match what I already have for the lock. And I think that's pretty golden, so I'm going to add it as a preset so I can come back to it later. If I want to recreate that in the bathroom, I can use the eyedropper, which you're familiar with, or I can use the preset, which we just added. You know, I might want to separate these doors out a little bit more. That might help. To be quite honest, I have a lot of opinions on placement of doors from renting so many apartments over the years. And now we go to the front door where I'm going to lay out a path. So I go to the terrain tiles, pick out some bricks, and I end up laying these about the width of the door so that hopefully it looks like a nice cohesive path from the street to my door. And for the actual front door, I want to make sure that it's a wood that matches the interior a bit better, so I just make it a bit darker and a little bit more red toned. And now that we're done with the bones of the house, let's go on to furnishing, because that's something that I really wanted to be able to show you this time around. Here you can see some of the categories that we have available, and again, disclaimer, we're editing and we're adding stuff all of the time, so stuff might come, stuff might go. And if you have something specific in mind, you can of course search, so let me actually go ahead and do that because let's start with a bed for our bedroom. Now for an artistic cut to avoid the half an hour I spent looking at beds, and this is the one I settle on because it has so many options. So let me make the most of those 5 customization slots, and I kind of zoom out here so that I can see what it might look like in, regards to the entire room. I personally really want it to all work together. I tend to use a lot of the same colors in my rooms. So I go with a dark purple to complement the walls and hopefully still be a good bedding color. Now that I've kind of set the tone for the bedroom, I'm going to go ahead and sort by the room, so bedroom, and then decide on a dresser. I go with something nice and simple, and right about here is when I realize how big this room actually is. And with so much room, I figure why not add a vanity, even though I do, spoiler alert, realize that it doesn't quite fit the aesthetic of the room. Now that I've sorted by nightstands, I go ahead and pick out a very simple design and put one on each side of the bed. Now I go to decorations and I put an alarm clock on one of the side tables. For the other side table, I briefly contemplate adding a houseplant before I decide that's not a great idea. I really do need some lighting in here though, so I go to lighting and then I sort by table lamps. Once I've settled on a design, I go ahead and zoom in to make sure that I'm placing this exactly where I want it to go on this side table, and I place it on the other side as well for good measure. Now that I've realized how big I've made this room, I decide to make a little nook for whoever lives here to play guitar. So I place down a guitar and I put down a chair. I'm kind of just putting them down for now, and I'm gonna actually place them a little bit more carefully in a second. I like to just put down everything that I want or think I want, and as you can see, zoom in to start to arrange them. If you have a different way of decorating, let us know in the comments. We've found out that everyone on the team plays a little differently. To continue decorating, I sort by fitness equipment, and here you can see there's a lot of options for machinery and weights, but I decide for a house like this, I'm going to go with a step. You'll probably notice this throughout the video, but this step moves around a lot while we try to find a spot for it. And next up is going to be a desk. I've gone ahead and moved the bed so that we have enough room to put a desk on this back wall, and I pick out a chair before I pick out my desk. So I'm thinking of a desk that might be good for both gaming and for work. I decide on this desk because it feels nice, simple, and also big enough for a computer that I think will be good. And here I double and triple check that this desk is in the corner just right and that the chair is perfectly set with the desk. And I go back and reopen the decorations and quickly get sidetracked with the trash can, so I go ahead and put that. And I haven't mentioned it yet, but green feet means that someone can access that item. Now I decide to put some shelving. I think, oh, maybe this would be great next to the desk, but realize quickly, no, that wall will look way too crowded. So I place it in the middle of the room while I do some rearranging. After some quick moving magic, you'll find that the vanity just poof disappears, and the room looks a little nicer. Now that I have a better composition for my room, I decide to fill out this wall here with another piece of shelving. And this time I actually sort by bookshelves. I go with this very simple bookshelf because I know I don't have a lot of room here and I don't want to crowd it too much, but I do think this one will look nice. And you've probably noticed that as I place things, it does still cost money. That being said, this is an empty lot. No one lives here, so this money isn't being charged to any one person. And now we move on to another day of building. You'll notice that I put some windows up because I realized as soon as I opened up my lot, the walls are kind of empty. So here we move into a quick wall decorating montage. I try to think about what might be fun for the person who will live here, so I put up some posters near their workspace as well as that nice greenery. It takes me a couple seconds to put these posters just right. I'll definitely have to come back and just stare at everything with a fine-tooth comb. Next, I search for a mirror because I debated putting one on the wall, but I end up going with a standing mirror, and I really like that. Here you can see where my train of thought kind of leaves me because I realize, oh, well, if I have a mirror here, then I should probably put a rug down. And I'm starting to realize that I have a black, purple, white aesthetic going, so I leave the rugs black. I come back from my little sidetrack to the walls, and I add some floral posters in the back for another pop of color, and a black and white clock. The back wall is still looking pretty empty, so I decide on some landscape paintings for right above the bed. Again, I go ahead and put 3 of them. And now for a quick spin of my room before I decide, yep, time to move on to the bathroom. Moving on, I clear all my filters and I go to search by room and bathroom. I briefly contemplate adding a toilet paper holder for some reason before I add anything else. But don't worry, I don't do that. I go ahead and add a bathtub first. Feeling awfully fancy in the bathroom because I go for the really nice versions of everything, as you might notice. I quickly add Snap 2 because I want to make sure I'm placing that properly. Then I switch over to showers and add the nice glass shower. And I'm realizing the value of this house is increasing quite rapidly. I don't know if that's a bad thing or not, but we're just going to keep building. I go to buy a toilet and realize I don't really have somewhere I want to place this toilet right now. So I go to walls. I want to add a nice divider here. I click add wall. You just click and drag like when we're building the house. And I think that'll be the right spot for it, but I do want to make sure that I have space. First, we go to our friendly eyedropper and make sure that it matches the rest of the walls. And once it matches, I play around with where it's placed. You can see those 2 circles actually move the wall back and forth. And my main goal here is to make sure that whoever lives here can actually access everything easily. Now I go back to decorations, filter by room, accidentally click bedroom, go back to bathroom, And you might expect me to go to toilets, but I want to make sure I know where the sink can go before I actually place a toilet. I debate splurging on a nicer sink, but I go with the basic sink and cabinet because I know that's going to fit, and decide to splurge on a mirror. I like the built-in lighting of this LED mirror, and I think that actually works really nice with the square, kind of clean aesthetic I have going here. Next up, I add a cabinet because I want to make sure I have enough space for everything I want to put in this bathroom. And now that I have that there, I think I'm going to put the toilet on the left. I quickly add a shelf behind the tub and move on to the toilet. Finally, I pick the modern toilet because, again, this is a very surprisingly nice bathroom, and rearrange for that toilet. So I'm really liking this layout, and I think next up is to add some just nice decorations. So I know in the decorations we have this Himalayan salt lamp, which means I probably want a table for it. So I go ahead and search a side table, and immediately that blue and white one catches my eye. It already looks perfect for this bathroom. I go back to bathroom decor, and I add that Himalayan salt lamp. And I really like the look of this, but I think a rug would just pull this all together a little better. So I actually go back to category, go to deco, and go to rugs. There's this one particular rug that just looks so incredibly fluffy. I just know that I want to touch that after I get out of the shower or the bathtub. Since I'm already in rugs, I go ahead and add one to the sink. And looking around, I see that the walls are kind of empty, so I make sure to go back to bathroom. And once I'm in bathroom, I go back to decorations and add a towel rack. And once that's in, I'm really liking the bathroom. I go ahead and take a better look and realize that one shelf is not the right color. So I go ahead and change it to another one of its defaults and take a nice look at both rooms before I decide, yep, I think I can move on. Hope you like those too. And now for the living room. Really quickly, I wanted to show you that you can drag walls up and down to adjust the height of your floor, and similarly, you can adjust the roof either up or down to match. I will leave the walls as is for now and actually show you how to add a trim, since I know that was something folks asked about before. So here we have options for both vertical and horizontal trims. Here I'm showing you the horizontal thin trim. I go ahead and turn off snapping so that I can be a little bit more defined in where I want that trim. As you can see, there's just a nice stripe along the bottom. I'll show you on this wall what a horizontal wide looks like. And I move on to the front wall to show you what a vertical trim looks like. I go with the vertical block, and you can see that it juts out a little bit so that it gives the wall a third dimension. And just like anything else, you can remove a trim. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. I don't actually want that trim there, but I do want to show you one last trim. So I go ahead back to the wall, and once I'm clicked on the wall, I go and show you the horizontal bevel because I think that one's kind of just neat. That being said, I don't actually want most of those trims. I do want the horizontal thin, and I do put that on every single wall so that they kind of all match. Now a quick montage of me adding this trim to each of my walls. I decide against putting any other trims on my bathroom or bedrooms or even this interior white wall because I like the way that this trim breaks up the pattern. I don't necessarily think that will be the case for those rooms. And much like the bathroom, I think I could do with a wall divider here, so I go ahead and put one out for what I think will be the living room and the kitchen. It looks pretty good. I accidentally put down another piece of wall, so excuse me. And I end up realizing that this window is a bit off-center, so I go ahead and fix that, and looking at the rest of my windows, decide to come back and fix those later as well. But my first focus is this wall. I want to make sure I have enough room for all of my kitchen counters, so I do push it out a little bit, and once I'm happy with it, eyedropper is back, and we're making sure this wall matches everything else. I'm pretty happy with that and that layout. I look around again just to make sure everything's shaping up, and it's time for this empty space. I have just the rug in mind from when we were in the rugs earlier, so I go back to deco, go back to rugs, and I want this ginormous red rug. It just looks so nice, and I'm really excited to kind of build the room around this piece. Next is a TV and a TV stand. So I go ahead and go with the simple TV stand. I lock it into place, and I do end up rearranging it a little bit on the back wall, but like everything else in this house, it's going to move again, so don't worry. Next is a TV for my TV stand, so I go with the rectangular stand TV, and once I find it fits pretty perfectly in the middle, I'm happy with that. I now look at the rest of the room and realize this rug might be better off more horizontal to the street. So I switch that up, and I know I need some couches next. And just looking at these initial couches, I already like this red one. It matches and it really goes with the vibe already. So I go ahead and place that one. I immediately think, well, what's one couch? I need two couches. So I add a second couch, and this one doesn't fit the aesthetic yet, but I go ahead and adjust the colors so that it almost matches the other couch as well. I'm really liking how colorful this is, but like many of you have probably noticed, it doesn't look or feel quite center, so I do move everything again. I will say once I add in some decorations, it does feel more cohesive and more centered, so hopefully trust the process. Speaking of decorations, I go ahead and search for shelves. I think a shelf will really help pull this together, but as I'm looking through, I realize I don't really know what kind of shelf I want. I do know that these hexagonal shelves would probably look good, so I end up placing a couple of those. And by a couple, I do mean about half a dozen, but it's just once I got into the right spot and I got the right spacing between them, I thought they looked really nice and they built out a really neat organic pattern. So hopefully you like it. And once I've placed them all, I actually realized I could have actually shown you another tool instead. So you can actually click on it and just click the little duplicate tool, and it'll allow you to make another one. I didn't actually want that one, so I go ahead and delete it, just to show you that you can be more efficient if you're not me. So next I go ahead and move on to changing the color of these. I really wanted to see what the defaults were because I didn't want to spend too much time in the color wheel, and realizing I like that default, I go ahead and copy it over to everything else, and that's using the little paintbrush tool. Realizing I didn't quite scratch that shelf itch with those, I go back to shelves. I pick out this triangle shelf because I think it will hopefully fit and also still match the aesthetic. I take a look at what I've done, make sure I like it before I move on, because I remember looking at the shelves, there was a shelf I actually wanted for the kitchen. So I go ahead, pick that out, drag it over, we'll worry about that later. I also take note of this little decorative plant, which I think will work just above this shelf, and now I have more plants. I have a quick moment where I realize I forgot to put a trash can in the bathroom, so I go ahead and add one and get back to my living room. One thing I immediately want to do is fill that corner, so I go ahead and go back to lighting, and I go back to floor lamps. I don't want to put the same exact floor lamp. I think about it for a second, but decide that this triangle lamp might actually work better next to the triangle shelf. That does, however, mean I think I should move this door, so I luckily have enough room to do so, and I pull back the walls and just shift the door over to make sure I can have enough space for everybody walking through. Now for this big empty space in the living room, I think we need a dining table here, so I filter by room, go to dining room, and get to the tables. The table is going to be the main big piece here, so I go with the regular rectangular kitchen table. I like the wood, but I do think it's the wrong color, so I go ahead and make that darker, and once I'm happy with it, I move on to the chairs. I like a good tall back to my chair, so I go with this basic chair. I know I can color it to be hopefully a little bit more in line with the rest of the house, so I place it, I go through some of the defaults, decide I don't really like any of them for this particular aesthetic, and I change it to match the red. Once I'm happy with the chair, I go ahead and duplicate it for each of the sides of the table, and now I have my dining room set. And once again, I'm reminded that these walls are kind of empty, so looking at this back wall over here, I decide to go find a nice decoration. I go back to wall deco, and I place some photographs. You know, the living room might have some more fun memories and stuff like that. I decide to filter by houseplants, and this one red flower looks like it would kind of match, so I go ahead and place it. While looking at dining room tables, I realize I completely forgot a coffee table, so I go over, browse, and try a couple of them before I settle on one that's a nice wooden finish like a lot of this house is turning out to be. I place it between the couches, but once I do, I realize I also want an ottoman, so I go ahead, pick one out. I really like this one's shape, and once it's out there, I have to do some more rearranging. After I shift everything over, I place the ottoman in the corner in the end, and you might have noticed it's white, so I'm going to go ahead and make it match the rest of my furniture by making it red. I might be overdoing it on the red, but it is what it is. And we still have a very blank wall in the back, so I decide to pull out a shelf. I think this will work, and I just need to recolor it. And now for a quick little montage of me playing around with the colors. I did speed this up because I didn't want to bore you too much, but I also wanted to show you some of the color combinations that are possible and hopefully inspire you for when you do decide to build your own houses. Don't worry, I don't make it red. I go with a brown that matches the rest of the house. And once it's in place, I actually go ahead and go to the decorations and add a little tree. I move it around a little bit, but I'm not going to bore you by filling out these shelves right now. Next, I actually go to add a speaker because I realize I don't actually have a speaker for my television yet. Once I'm in the speakers, I decide on this tall speaker and realize really quickly how crowded this space is getting. So I decide to move some stuff, shift around so that I have room for this speaker. And I do find one spot where the speaker works, and honestly, once it's in there, I really like how it's slotted in, so I leave it be. And now for a fireplace. I saw the fireplace while I was just looking around, and honestly, I got pretty obsessed to the point where I was like, I'm willing to redo half of this house to make it fit. Once I find my fireplace again, I go ahead and place it. It is the brick fireplace. You might recognize it from some of our other videos. I personally want it for the other color scheme, but you'll see it in just a second. I do have to move this shelf to make it work, but honestly, like I said, I'm willing to sacrifice whatever I need to at this point. I decide the tree is one of those sacrifices, so away it goes. But the fireplace is now accessible, and that is what matters to me. So I place that, and I change it to the secondary color scheme, which I think works so well with the walls here. It does mean that I have to move this shelf because it's just way too crowded in that corner, but I actually think it fits better on this wall anyway, so I'm happy with it. It did leave behind an entirely open wall, so more room for wall decor. I go back and I actually go back to search by dining room because I think some of that wall deco was what I wanted. I don't necessarily like this geometric shape. I opt out pretty quickly, but I like these photographs because they match the photographs on the other wall, so I'm happy with that too. Before we head to the kitchen, I want to actually put something in this entryway. It feels kind of empty, so I try out a couple of benches. I think a nice bench in the entryway where, thematically you put on your shoes, that kind of thing. And looking at the two that I put side by side, I quickly decide that I like the shape of the pink one more, though I do like the color of the blue one. So I end up taking this pink one and I make it more blue so it kind of matches the bathroom. I even take a look at the bathroom to make sure I like it. Now for the final room, the kitchen. I know I want my appliances on the left side, so I go ahead, pull up the rooms, keep filtering by room, this time going to kitchen. Once I'm here, I go to the modern kitchen set, decide that's a bit too modern for my current house setup, and go to the retro kitchen set. Immediately I know that this is the right set for this house, so I go ahead and place the cabinet, I go ahead and place the stovetop, as well as the sink. Next up on the list of essentials is a refrigerator. So once I have that set, I go ahead, go back to my drop down and sort by refrigerators. So I'm thinking the refrigerator can be over in the corner. I go ahead and pick one that I think will fit. Once that's in place, I realize I want an island, so I go back to the retro kitchen set and I pick out the island. I go ahead and place it in the middle, making sure all of the feet stay green. I want this to be very accessible and very usable by whoever ends up living here. But looking at this, I realized the fridge is in like the worst spot for actual cooking. So I go ahead, move this shelf over because it doesn't really need to be there. That was a whim. And I move the fridge. Once the fridge is in the back right corner, everything is slotted into place. So I decide it's actually time to add some color and some appliances. I decide we need some more of that bright blue from the bathroom and the kitchen to make it pop. So I go ahead and make this fridge very loud and very blue. Once I'm happy with that blue, I go ahead and move over to the shelf for one more pop of color, and I make this one a very vibrant blue as well. I'm really liking this white, blue, red, purple combo, so hopefully you are too. And here I am trying to give you a good look at the house. I do end up wrapping it up after these appliances and one more little thing afterward. But let's go ahead and get into appliances. So I go ahead and go to kitchen needs and deco, and I know a couple of these that I'm going to definitely include. One of my first priorities is, of course, a coffee machine. I debate the slightly worse one, but I do go with the nice one, of course. I do add a set of cutting knives because I think those will go really well next to this sink. And I need a microwave, just a necessity, so I go ahead and place that as well. I put a cutting board on the center island, and I do want to put a blender in this last spot over here. And that's pretty much everything. I don't have a toaster or a couple of smaller items, but I can always expand the kitchen later. That's it for the interior of this house. Let's move outside for one last thing. As you can see, this was a bit earlier on in the build, but I was kind of jumping around a lot already, and I didn't want to add more to that. But I did want to show you our fences. So here you can see we have two base fences, this one right here, and the one I'm building on the left. Once I've built it out, you can see that it's a very bright blue, and that's because each of those are components that you can replace. So as you can see, I'm replacing these pillars with this pillar I've selected, and then I can replace the fencing with any one of these pieces of fence. So hopefully you can mix and match and get the fence that makes the most sense for the house that you're trying to build. Don't worry, neither of these will stick with this house. So for this fence, you can go ahead and click on it, and as you can see in the drop down, I'm under caps and I'm adjusting the cap. Right now it's a brick, but you can go ahead and change it between any of the available textures. You can use any of the filters on the left as well. You can also change the color of what that cap would be. I end up going with this marble, and I actually changed the color because I think this marble has a really lovely grain, but I want it to look like wood. And you can do that for both the cap and the body of the wall. Another thing that you can do is go to this little gear icon and toggle on the wall caps and corner caps. And that's it. So thank you so much for watching. Hope that showed off some more of our tools, and please feel free to leave all of your questions and comments below. Have a great weekend.